obscure city is a place where you can find many unique dangers. This is where she works, Cassandra Killjoy, paranormal private eye. Now a teenage girl's father has gone missing, and Killjoy believes that the city's enigmatic protector, the swordsman, is the key to finding him. So Killjoy must face many deadly dangers in her search for the swordsman. Available on Amazon.com. Most of the dragons are dead, but the cost of defeating them was too high. Furthermore, our heroes have no time to celebrate their latest victory, as the true villain of the Chroma Conclave Arc has been uncovered. Greetings fanboys, fangirls, and critters, and welcome to Cartoon vs. Campaign, where we compare The Legend of Vox Machina to the Dungeons & Dragons campaign that inspired it. As per usual, all past disclaimers from all past videos still apply. I will only repeat the most important one. There will be spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen The Legend of Vox Machina Seasons 1 through 3, or Campaign 1 of Critical Role, you might want to stop the video here. You've been warned. When we last left off, our heroes led an entire army against Thordak, but in spite of their hard-earned victory, they still have to face the true villain of this saga.
Raishan, the deceased deceiver.
When we last saw our heroes, they had just been betrayed by Raishan, who as it turns out, was just manipulating them to steal Thordak's corpse. In the cartoon, she just reveals her betrayal and leaves. In the campaign, an entire epic brawl ensues the moment that she reveals herself to be a traitor, which kicks off by her calling upon a meteor swarm that deals a great deal of damage to the party and knocks Vexalia unconscious. Gilmore and Kima join them as the battle kicks off. Raishan turns invisible as Keyleth turns into a fire elemental and tries to fight her head on. As this is happening, Grog heals Vexalia back to consciousness, but the battle is so intense that she is knocked back into unconsciousness 2 more times. Scanlan placed the flute that Jamon Saord gave them back in Marquette, and summons the brass dragon Devosa to help them. And this is when Raishan officially realizes that she's outmatched. So she casts haste, grabs 2 of Thordak's eggs, and hightails it out of the cavern and up the tunnel at super speed, moving so fast that none of our heroes can manage to get an attack of opportunity. They try to chase after her, but she creates an invisible barrier that blocks their path. In the cartoon, she doesn't use the invisible barrier until their final battle, and she uses it to keep Vox Machina separate from Keyleth. In both versions, it is Grog who gets them through the barrier. In the cartoon, he just punches it until one of the runestones powering the barrier collapses. In the campaign, he throws a piece of eggshell from one of Thordak's eggs at the barrier and sees it go through. So our heroes use the pieces of eggshell to dispel the barrier and they get through. But as they run up the tunnel, not only do they not find Raishan and the 2 eggs that she stole, they also discover that Thordak's corpse is missing. Yeah, they've been played. In the cartoon, they have a big blowout after this, as all of this could have been prevented had they just listened to Keyleth. So after a few harsh words, the angry druid quits the team, turns into a giant eagle, and flies away. No such animosity transpires in the campaign, where our heroes exit the crater to find that the battle is winding down. There, they reunite with Zara, Cash, and Carrick, a paladin played by the great Patrick Rothfuss, who they met back when they were in Western fighting Umbrasyl. However, Scanlan is not with them. He stayed back in the cavern to get high off of the sood that Jared gave him. First, he tries snorting it, but all that does is hurt his sinuses. Then, he tries smoking it, but he doesn't have a pipe. So he takes the brass flute that was gifted to him by Jamon Saord, stuffs it full of sood, lights it, and takes a hit. And the effects are so strong that he passes out. Say no to sood, kids. At this point, the rest of the party are trying to spread the word that Thordak is dead and the battle is over. Keyleth does this by skywriting the symbol of Iman in the sky. Percy, however, simply tells his commanding officers to spread the word. Our heroes then go back into the crater where they find Scanlan recuperating from the effects of the sood. They confront him about it, but he deflects the blame to Vax for chasing after Thordak into the crater alone. Vax responds to this by simply taking out a letter that was meant to be read in the case of his death and shoving it into Scanlan's chest. Scanlan opens it and reads it, and all it says is, "You were right." This causes the Dragon Devosa to start laughing, and she says, "The drama of such short lives." She then advises Vox Machina not to fight Raishan on her terms, and now that her obligations to Vox Machina have been fulfilled, she disappears. After that, our heroes raid Thordak's hoard and find two very important magical items: the Deck of Many Things, which will be very important later, and a new flying carpet. Our heroes then argue about what to do with all the treasure that Thordak stole. They each take a small portion of the treasure and agree that the clasp should also get a portion for helping them back in the tunnels, and that the rest of the money should be allocated for rebuilding Iman. Kima then volunteers to guard the treasure until it is distributed, but soon after that, Doxio and the rest of the Iman soldiers show up and relieve her of such duty, as it is their responsibility to guard Iman and its treasures. After that, our heroes once again exit the crater, and Keyleth scries on Raishan, seeing her in her default human form for the first time, which is a pale, thin woman with green hair, whom she sees preparing to perform a ritual with Thordak's corpse and the two eggs. In the cartoon, Raishan appears in her default human form much earlier during their first meeting, and her appearance is way different. She looks more like a Dora Milaje, which I believe was done in honor of her voice actor, Cree Summer, who is African-American/Canadian. Furthermore, unlike the campaign where Keyleth already had the ability to scry, in the cartoon, she goes through an entire ordeal to gain said power. After quitting the team, she returns to Sephra, where it is her father, Corin, who informs her of the scrying spell. But it is a forbidden Earth Ashari ritual, and she will have to convince the council to allow her to learn it. After much deliberation, Patisse, the leader of the Earth Ashari, played by the great Deborah Wilson, agrees to teach her the ritual, which nearly kills Keyleth. But ultimately, not only does she gain her scrying powers, but she also passes her Earth Aramente in the process, gaining the power to turn into an Earth Elemental. Yet another power she already had in the campaign. Furthermore, in the cartoon, after she scries on Raishan, she immediately knows exactly where Raishan is. In the campaign, not so much. She describes what she saw to the others, and it is Carrick who identifies the location as one of the islands on the Hespec archipelago. Unfortunately, he doesn't know which one. So they decide to take the paladin with them back to Whitestone, where hopefully they can make use of his knowledge to find Raishan. There, our heroes return to the castle to recuperate after the massive battle with Thordak. But not Scanlan. He meets with Jarrett again and modifies his memory so he will continue to get him sued in spite of his reluctance. Back in the castle, this is when the infamous bathtub scene happens. In both versions, the scene transpires exactly the same way. Vax finds Percy soaking in a tub, seemingly alone, and joins him, where they have a heart-to-heart, and Vax reveals that he considers Percy as a brother, and then takes his leave, only for Vex to pop out from under the water, revealing that she had been hiding there the whole time. It is important to note that in the campaign, nobody knew that Vex was going to pop out of the water until Laura Bailey revealed it, and the reaction was electric, and it is one of the 101 reasons why I feel everyone should check out the campaign. After getting cleaned up, our heroes and Carrick meet with Alora, who further identifies Raishan's location based on Keyleth and Carrick's description, pinpointing it as the island of Viscan, located in the South Lucidian Ocean. Alora and Keyleth scry on the location together just to make sure, and sure enough, they both see Raishan in her human form still preparing for the ritual. So they decide to rest up for the night, regain their powers, and head out first thing in the morning to stop Raishan from doing whatever it is that she's doing, or move to a different location. Vax once again spends the night with Keyleth. Scanlan once again spends the night with his pipe flute. In the morning, they teleportal to the Isle of Viscan, along with Carrick, Alora, and Kima, and start their dangerous trek to Raishan's necromantic laboratory. In the cartoon, the party reassembles in Sephra, where they kiss and make up, and then teleportal to Viscan. But they don't take any of their allies with them. And of course, Percy is missing, as he is dead during this portion of the story. And they make it to Raishan's lair without incident. That is not the case in the campaign, where they run into a lot of obstacles along the way. There are a few quicksand traps between them and the mountain where Raishan is hiding, but they easily avoid those thanks to Vex's awesome rogue skills. Then they find a giant boulder blocking their way into the mountain. Grog barely gets the boulder to move, creating an opening just wide enough for them to squeeze through. But the party has to use both of their immovable rods just to keep the small entryway open. Inside, they are burnt by a fire trap and are attacked by a couple of flaming skulls, which they take out easily. And then, they make it to a chasm where gravity is reversed, and it rains zombies upside down, which is the most Matt Mercer trap ever. After a bit of trial and error, and Pike and Carrick using Turn Undead to destroy a few of the zombies, the entire party makes it across. On the other side, they discover a green gem on the ceiling that is causing the reverse gravity, and Allura disables it. Vax scouts ahead and officially finds Raishan in her necromantic laboratory, about to perform a ritual with Thordak's corpse and the 2 eggs. In both versions, Keyleth approaches Raishan alone, while the rest of the party takes strategic positions. Raishan keeps her back turned and continues performing the ritual, seemingly unthreatened. In the cartoon, however, Raishan seemingly takes out the rest of Vox Machina with a meteor swarm, only to brutally be killed by Keyleth using ice spikes and grasping vines. But as it turns out, it's too late. Raishan had completed the ritual and transfers her spirit into Thordak's corpse, turning herself into an arcane zombie dragon, who is immune to the vestiges of divergence. Vox Machina, of course, were not killed by the meteor swarm and jump into the fray, but they are no match for her, and like I pointed out earlier, get separated from Keyleth by a magical barrier, leaving the druid to fight the deceased deceiver alone. In the campaign, our heroes and their allies arrive just in time to interrupt the ritual, and Raishan never becomes zombie Thordak. Furthermore, the battle that ensues is completely different. While Keyleth and Raishan are having their talk, Vax and Percy destroy the 2 eggs, which cause Raishan to vanish, revealing herself to be an illusion. However, Vexalia can still sense her in the room via her primeval sense, meaning that she's nearby, but invisible. So Scanlan uses the Horn of Fog and fills the room with fog, which helps them see Raishan, now in her dragon form, a little better. And the fight is on! Raishan summons a couple of wraiths to attack our heroes, and while they are distracted, she casts Meteor Swarm, dealing a great deal of damage, and even knocking out a few of them unconscious, which she then follows up with a Cone of Cold, knocking out a few more. Keyleth retaliates with Firestorm, dealing considerable damage on Raishan, and the still conscious party members seize the opportunity to awaken their fallen comrades. The party then attacks in full, making Raishan feel cornered, so she savagely lashes out and kills Scanlan. In the cartoon, Scanlan doesn't die. He is instead left comatose after crashing on Bigby's hand while escaping Thordak's nest. Back in the campaign, Allura successfully casts the spell Magic, making Raishan visible, and then says to Keyleth, "You have to finish this." So now that the dragon is in plain sight, Keyleth casts Feeble Mind, turning Raishan from a calculating, intelligent adversary to a feral savage beast. So once again, the remainder of the party strike as one, but Raishan's savagery is too intense, and she kills Percy. Yes, Percy dies twice during the Chroma Conclave Arc. As I said before, in the cartoon, Keyleth is left to battle Raishan alone, while Vox Machina is trapped behind a barrier. At first, nothing seems to work against the zombie dragon, until Keyleth gets a brilliant idea. She strategically places herself between the dragon and Raishan's human corpse, and then goads the dragon into shooting her with her fire breath. The attack seemingly destroys Keyleth and Raishan's corpse, much to Vox Machina's horror. But what it actually does is turn Raishan's old poisoned corpse into ash, which is then absorbed into the earth, which Keyleth can now control thanks to her new Earth Ashari powers. Keyleth then re-emerges under the dragon in her Earth Elemental form, and pumps the disease from Raishan's old body into her new body, poetically killing the deceased deceiver with disease. Raishan then crumples onto the chamber floor and melts to death. In the campaign, after witnessing the dragon kill yet another one of his friends, the usually even-tempered Carrick officially gets pissed off. So he takes a position between Percy's dead body and the dragon. Raishan, who is still suffering the effects of feeble mind, stupidly charges at the paladin. Using her momentum against her, Carrick bashes Raishan over the head with his mighty glowing dusk hammer, completely caving her head in. And so, Raishan, the deceased deceiver, falls dead. The Chroma Conclave have been defeated. In the cartoon, the rest of Vox Machina break through the barrier thanks to Grog's brute strength, and they reunite with Keyleth. Vax romantically kisses her, but Kiki remembers that she just has disease pass through her body in order to poison Raishan. So she responds to the very romantic kiss by throwing up. So chunky. They then return home without incident. That is not the case in the campaign, where so much happens before they get to go home. While they have won the battle, two of their friends are still down. Pike casts Revivify on Percy, and he instantly comes back to life. But when they try to do the same for Scanlan, it doesn't work. And very much like the moment from the cartoon when Grog realizes that Scanlan is comatose, the Goliath is devastated, and he begs the others to fix him. And in both versions, Travis Willingham's performance is heartbreaking. Percy tries to be the voice of reason and says that they need to get Scanlan to a temple. So Vax picks up Scanlan in his arms and Allura goes to teleport them back to Whitestone. But it doesn't work. Determining that something in the cavern is blocking their magic, the party hauls ass to the exterior, where Allura tries to teleport them again. But it goes wrong, and only her and Kima disappear. Keyleth scries on them and sees them floating somewhere in the middle of the ocean. The party then decides to run to the beach, where they can hopefully spot their allies in the water. And miraculously, Keyleth manages to spot their friends floating somewhere in the horizon. Vex gets on her broom and Percy gets on the flying carpet, and they fly over there, pick them up, and bring them back to the shore, where Keyleth tree portals them back to Whitestone, where they rush Scanlan to the temple of the Raven Queen. In the cartoon, the party seems to be in a completely different headspace at this point. They take Scanlan to his room, but only Pike and Grog tend to him. At this point, Percy is dead, so Vex and Vax leave to get revenge on Ripley for killing Percy. And Keyleth is precariously trying to complete the ritual to acquire her scrying powers so she can find Raishan. Furthermore, it is Pike who gets the idea to get Kaylee so she can help to bring Scanlan back to consciousness. So, she gets Allura to teleport her to Kaimal, where Kaylee is performing with Dr. Dransel and his traveling troupe. There, she talks Kaylee into helping, and then Allura teleports them back. In the campaign, it is Percy who makes the suggestion to go get Kaylee, and it is Vex who volunteers to go to Kaimal and get her. However, it is Eskel Rendarian, a local mage, who teleports her there. So she talks to Kaylee into helping them, and then sends her alone to Whitestone using a gatestone. Unfortunately for Vex, she has to wait until morning for Eskel to regain his powers and teleport them back, which means that Vexalia has to spend the night not knowing if Scanlan is alive or dead. In the cartoon, Kaylee just talks to Scanlan and confesses that while Scanlan is a screw-up, she does appreciate his efforts to connect with her and make things right, which causes Scanlan to wake up. Easy peasy. In the campaign, it is not that simple. In both versions, Vax pleads with the Raven Queen to bring his friend back. The big difference is that in the cartoon he does this for Percy, while in the campaign he does this for Scanlan. The first thing Kaylee does when she shows up is slap Scanlan's corpse and say, "You made me a promise." And then she proceeds to get drunk while Pike finishes preparing the ritual. The ritual itself consists of Scanlan's different loved ones contributing something to coerce his spirit to return to his body. Pike contributes a doll that Scanlan once gave her, and she also recites a poem. Grog sings a song. Then Kaylee takes out her fiddle and plays a beautiful melody for her father. Vax, unknowns to her, performs lay on hands and removes the alcohol from her body in order to ensure the beauty of the performance. And it works. Scanlan comes back to life, but he stays asleep. In truth, the reason Scanlan doesn't instantly come back to consciousness is because Sam Riegel was actually absent during this episode. and understandably, the cast wanted to wait for him to return so he could be the one to provide Scanlan's genuine reaction to being brought back to life. Grog takes Scanlan's body back to his room, while the others run into Allura and Kima, who tell them that they plan to return to Iman so they can serve with the council and help rebuild the city. Keyleth then asks Allura to use sending to send Vex a message and let her know that Scanlan is okay. Upon getting the news, Vexalia celebrates with a big bottle of booze for her and a bowl full of ale for Trinket. For reasons that are beyond my comprehension, Grog, Pike, and Percy decide to prank the sleeping Scanlan by dressing him in one of Pike's nightgowns and covering him and his room with pudding. Did I mention that sometimes this show is weird? In the cartoon, Vax seems to be suffering from corruption that is spreading all over his body as a result of bringing his friend back to life, a corruption that he elects to keep secret. In the campaign, there is no apparent consequence for Vax using his connection to the Raven Queen to bring his friend back to life. But when Vexalia returns from Kaimal in the morning, she finds her brother in the Temple of the Raven Queen, having placed the Deathwalker's ward on the altar and pleading with her to tell him what next, as he knows that there will be a cost for all the favors that she has granted him. While our heroes wait for Scanlan to wake up, they decide to run a few errands in the intervening time and leave Kaylee tending to him in their absence. Along with Carrick, they hitch a ride with Allura and Kima back to Iman, where they find that the city is already being reconstructed. Carrick says his goodbyes and heads back to Western to tend to his people. Our heroes go to Greyskull Keep to check on the state of their home, and then they tree portal to Vasselheim to keep the promise that they made to Senekir back in the Fireplane. There, as promised, they bury Senekir's wife's ashes under the Birth Heart. Then they visit the Trial Forge, where Grog spars with Earthbreaker Groon. Again. Only this time, he wins, which results in lightning striking the Titanstone knuckles and his vestige becoming exalted. After which, Grog and Earthbreaker Groon shake hands, and it is not specified that they Predator clasp, but I like to believe that they did. You son of a bitch. Then they try to go potion shopping, but that doesn't go well. So they return to Whitestone, where they find Kaylee asleep in a chair next to the still unconscious Scanlan. Grog tries to wake her up, only for her to wake up with a scream that officially wakes up Scanlan. In the cartoon, once the party is reunited, they have a pleasant chicken and mimosa lunch, in which Scanlan announces that he's taking time off from Vox Machina in order to spend time with Kaylee. Vax then admits that he also wants to take time off to help Keyleth finish her Aramente. Vexalia and Percy also plan to take a momentary leave to spend Winter's Crest in Whitestone with Cassandra, leaving only Pike and Grog to look after Iman. And thus, in a beautiful montage accompanied by an amazing song by Sam Riegel and Peter Habib, our heroes amicably part ways. That is not what happens in the campaign, at all. After Scanlan wakes, he calmly asks Kaylee to leave the room so he can have a word with his friends alone. As soon as she leaves, he proceeds to brutally chastise Vox Machina for bringing Kaylee to Whitestone and allowing her to see him dead, as he promised her that he wouldn't die. And now they have made him a liar. This is when we finally find out the reason why Scanlan was doing drugs, as now that he has a daughter, he has something to lose, and he couldn't handle the pressure, so he started self-medicating. He then proceeds to tell them that they don't care about him, and they only keep him around because he's useful. He further drives his point by asking them personal questions about himself. He asks, "How old am I? Is my father alive or dead? What is my mother's name?" And unfortunately, these are questions that Vox Machina can't answer. Pike simply approaches him, slaps him across the face, and says, "How dare you say we don't care about you?" Then, Percy, doing his absolute best to maintain his poise and decorum, simply says, "If Kaylee is the only thing that matters to you, then go be a father to her," and leaves the room, only to find Kaylee on the other side of the door, where it is evident that she had been listening the whole time. She then enters the room, looks at Scanlan, and says, "You coming?" And thus, Scanlan says his goodbyes and leaves Vox Machina along with his daughter. The question is, why isn't this iconic scene in the cartoon? Well, according to Sam Riegel and Travis Willingham, they actually had this entire scene completely scripted out. But at the time, they hadn't been greenlit for Season 4. So, if this was going to be the last episode of The Legend of Vox Machina, they didn't want to end it on a sour note. So, they made an executive decision and went with a much happier ending. And thus, in the campaign, just like their animated counterparts, Vox Machina parts ways. Scanlan and Kaylee begin their journey together through the woods just south of Whitestone, while the rest of the party continues to fulfill their duties as defenders of the realm, and keep one of the many promises that they made during their quest, by going to Marquette to deliver Ripley's prosthetic arm to Trev Bonebreaker. And so, the Chroma Conclave Arc comes to an end, with Keyleth opening a tree portal to Marquette via the Sun Tree, and our remaining heroes stepping through towards their next adventure and the next saga. So our epic compare and contrast once again comes to an end, with the defenders of the realm going their separate ways. But don't worry, one day Exandria will need them again, and they will reassemble and save us. For now, don't fret, because it's almost Thursday.